The helicopter's rotors cut through the Afghan night air like a metallic heartbeat, carrying 12 of America's most elite warriors toward what intelligence reports called a routine extraction mission. Navy SEAL Team 6 had conducted hundreds of these operations, but something felt different tonight. The target compound sat nestled in a valley surrounded by jagged mountains, and their mission was simple: retrieve a high-value asset and neutralize any threats. Sarah Martinez gripped her medical kit as the aircraft descended. At 28, she had served as a Navy hospital corpsman for 6 years, but this was only her third deployment with a SEAL team. The men around her were legends in their own right, warriors who had seen action in every major conflict of the past decade. They respected her medical expertise, but she could sense the invisible barrier that existed between her and the brotherhood of operators. Team Leader Commander Jack Harrison checked his watch and signaled 2 minutes to touchdown. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his eyes betrayed the weight of responsibility he carried for every soul on that helicopter. Staff Sergeant Mike, the team's demolitions expert, was methodically checking his charges for the third time. Next to him sat Petty Officer First Class David, their communications specialist, running through radio protocols with mechanical precision. The compound appeared in their night vision goggles like a green-tinted maze of mud walls and flat rooftops. Intelligence suggested minimal resistance, perhaps 4 to 6 enemy combatants protecting their target, a Taliban commander who had been selling weapons to multiple terrorist cells across the region. The plan was surgical: fast insertion, secure the target, and extract within 15 minutes. As the helicopter touched down in a cloud of dust and debris, the team moved with practiced efficiency. Sarah followed behind the assault element, her role clear and vital: provide immediate medical support if anyone got hit. The night was eerily quiet except for the distant sound of generators and the occasional bark of a guard dog. The team breached the compound's outer wall without incident. Harrison's hand signals directed the squad to split into 2 elements. Alpha Team would secure the main building where the target was believed to be sleeping, while Bravo Team would clear the perimeter and establish overwatch positions. Sarah moved with Bravo Team, staying close to cover while maintaining visual contact with both elements. Everything went according to plan for the first 8 minutes. Alpha Team had successfully located and secured their target, a bearded man in his 50s who offered no resistance when awakened. The compound appeared to be lightly defended, just as intelligence had predicted. But as the teams began their withdrawal, the night erupted in chaos. The first explosion came from the east wall, followed immediately by automatic weapons fire from multiple positions. What intelligence had missed was a secondary Taliban cell that had been using the compound as a staging area for their own operations. Nearly 20 enemy fighters had been sleeping in hidden bunkers beneath the courtyard, and now they poured out like angry wasps from a disturbed nest. Was the first to go down, catching shrapnel from an improvised explosive device that detonated near the main gate. Sarah heard his grunt of pain over the radio and immediately began moving toward his position, but enemy fire forced her to take cover behind a low stone wall. The familiar crack of AK-47s filled the air, mixing with the deeper roar of the team's M4 carbines. His voice crackled through the radio: "Multiple hostiles emerging from underground positions. We've got a serious problem here." His transmission was cut short by the distinctive whistle of an incoming rocket-propelled grenade. The explosion showered the courtyard with concrete and metal fragments. Harrison's tactical mind quickly assessed the situation. They were outnumbered, caught in a kill zone, and their extraction helicopter was taking heavy fire from concealed positions on the surrounding. The pilot's voice came through clearly. "Ground team, we're taking effective fire and need to pull back. Stand by for alternate extraction procedures." The team found themselves pinned down in various positions throughout the compound, was bleeding heavily from his leg wound, but continued to return fire from behind an overturned vehicle. Petty Officer Second Class Tommy Williams had taken a round through his shoulder, but kept his sniper rifle active, picking off enemy targets with methodical precision. Sarah's training kicked in as she low-crawled towards position. Bullets whined overhead, chipping pieces of concrete from the walls around her. She reached the wounded demolitions expert just as he was changing magazines with his good hand, his left leg twisted at an unnatural angle. "How bad is it, Doc?" asked through gritted teeth, never taking his eyes off the enemy positions. Sarah quickly assessed the wound. The shrapnel had torn through muscle and possibly nicked an artery, but it was treatable if she could stop the bleeding. She began applying pressure bandages while continued to provide covering fire, his weapon barking in controlled bursts. The firefight intensified as more Taliban fighters emerged from hidden positions. The team's superior training and equipment gave them an advantage, but they were gradually being surrounded. Harrison made the difficult decision to consolidate their position in the main building, using the target they had captured as a human shield while calling for immediate air support. Williams reported multiple enemy fighters moving to flank their position from the north, was coordinating with their quick reaction force, but the nearest friendly units were still 30 minutes away. The situation was deteriorating rapidly, and everyone knew it. Sarah finished treating S's wound and helped him move to a more defensible position inside the building. His leg was stabilized, but he would need surgery within hours to prevent permanent damage. As she worked, enemy bullets continued to crack overhead, some close enough that she could feel the air displacement. Petty Officer Jake, the team's youngest member at 22, had taken cover behind a generator near the building's entrance. His usual cocky demeanor had been replaced by the focused intensity of a warrior fighting for his life. He methodically engaged targets while conserving ammunition, knowing they might be in for a long fight. The Taliban fighters were becoming more coordinated in their attacks, suggesting the presence of experienced commanders among their ranks. They began using suppressing fire to allow other fighters to advance closer to the building, slowly tightening the noose around the trapped SEAL team. Harrison keyed his radio. "All stations, this is 6. We need immediate close air support. Transmitting coordinates now." His voice remained calm and professional despite the dire circumstances. Leadership in combat wasn't just about tactics. It was about maintaining morale and confidence when everything seemed lost. Sarah moved between the wounded, checking vitals and adjusting bandages. Condition was stable for now, and Williams was still functional despite his shoulder wound. But she knew that if this firefight continued much longer, they would all be in serious trouble. Her medical supplies were limited, and she couldn't perform major surgery in the middle of a combat zone. The sound of jet engines overhead brought a moment of hope. An F-16 Fighting Falcon had arrived on station and was requesting target coordinates. But the Taliban fighters were too close to the building for effective airstrikes without risking friendly casualties. The pilot would have to wait for a better opportunity. His radio crackled with updates from their quick reaction force. Friendly units were en route, but still 20 minutes out. The team's extraction helicopter was orbiting at a safe distance, waiting for the ground situation to stabilize before attempting another landing. As if sensing the Americans' growing desperation, the Taliban fighters launched another coordinated assault. This time they came from 3 directions simultaneously, forcing the SEAL team to split their defensive fire. Sarah found herself pressed against the wall next to, her medical bag clutched to her chest as bullets shattered the windows above their heads. Glanced at her with a mixture of respect and concern. "Stay low, Doc. We're gonna get through this." His words were meant to be reassuring, but Sarah could hear the uncertainty in his voice. They were all professional warriors, but even SEALs weren't invincible. The assault was beaten back, but at a cost. 2 more team members had taken minor wounds, and their ammunition was running low. Harrison made the difficult decision to abandon the compound and attempt a fighting withdrawal to a more defensible position on higher ground. Sarah helped carry as the team began their tactical retreat. Enemy fire followed them every step of the way, forcing them to bound from cover to cover in small groups. The captured Taliban commander had been wounded in the crossfire and was slowing their movement, but leaving him behind wasn't an option. They reached a small ridge overlooking the compound just as enemy reinforcements arrived in 3 pickup trucks. The situation had gone from bad to worse, and Sarah could see the grim determination on every face around her. These men would fight to the last bullet before they would surrender or abandon each other. Managed to establish communication with a nearby Apache helicopter gunship that had just arrived on station. The pilot confirmed multiple enemy vehicles approaching the ridge and requested permission to engage. Harrison quickly assessed the tactical situation and approved the gun run, hoping it would buy them enough time for their extraction. The Apache's 30 cannon lit up the night like a deadly fireworks display, destroying 2 of the approaching vehicles and scattering the enemy fighters. But more Taliban reinforcements were already visible in the distance. and the team's ammunition was nearly exhausted. Sarah checked her watch and realized they had been fighting for over an hour. In her medical assessment, needed immediate surgery, and Williams was showing signs of significant blood loss despite her treatment. The rest of the team was exhausted and running on pure adrenaline. Harrison gathered his men around him for a quick tactical briefing. Their extraction helicopter was still unable to land due to enemy fire, and the quick reaction force was still 15 minutes away. They needed to hold their position against overwhelming odds until help arrived. As the team prepared for what might be their final stand, Sarah noticed something that would change everything. While treating William's shoulder wound, she discovered something that none of them could have expected, something that would redefine everything they thought they knew about their quiet, professional corpsmen. The small ridge provided limited cover as Sarah worked frantically to stabilize William's shoulder wound. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, but something felt wrong about the injury. As she cut away the fabric around the wound site, her fingers detected what felt like metal beneath his skin, not shrapnel, but something else entirely. Williams winced as she probed the area more carefully. "Doc, what's wrong? You've got a strange look on your face." Sarah's training had taught her to recognize all types of foreign objects in wounds, but this was different. As she used her penlight to examine the area more closely, she could see the edge of what appeared to be a small titanium plate. But it wasn't medical hardware. The edges were too precise, too purposeful. "Tommy, I need you to stay very still," she whispered, her voice carrying an edge that made Williams focus completely on her face. "This isn't just a bullet wound, there's something else here." Harrison was coordinating their defensive positions when he noticed Sarah's tense posture over Williams. He moved closer, keeping low to avoid sniper fire from the compound below. "What's the situation, Doc?" Sarah looked up at her team leader with an expression that Harrison had never seen before, not fear, not confusion, but recognition. She carefully extracted a small piece of what looked like high-tech circuitry from William's shoulder, holding it up to the dim light of tactical flashlight. "Commander, this isn't shrapnel," Sarah said quietly. "This is military-grade surveillance technology. Tommy's been carrying this for God knows how long." The implications hit the team like a physical blow. Williams stared at the small device in Sarah's fingers, his face pale from more than just blood loss. "That's impossible. I would have known if someone had implanted something in me." Sarah's mind raced through possibilities as she examined the device more carefully. The technology was sophisticated far beyond anything the Taliban could produce or even acquire. This was American-made, possibly even classified technology that she had only heard rumors about in her advanced medical training. "When was your last physical at Bethesda Naval Hospital?" Sarah asked Williams, her voice taking on a clinical tone that the team had never heard before. Williams thought for a moment, struggling to focus through his pain. "About 8 months ago, right before this deployment. They did some kind of experimental scan, said it was for a new fitness assessment program." Harrison's tactical mind immediately grasped the situation's implications. If Williams had been unknowingly implanted with surveillance technology, it meant their missions had been compromised from the beginning. Every operation, every target, every tactical decision could have been monitored and transmitted to unknown parties. But what shocked the team into silence wasn't just the discovery of the implant. It was watching Sarah handle the device with a familiarity that suggested she knew exactly what it was and how it worked. Despite his leg wound, had managed to position himself where he could observe Sarah's actions. "Doc, how do you know what that thing is? You're handling it like you've seen one before." Sarah's hands paused over the device, and for a moment the sound of distant gunfire seemed to fade away. She looked at each member of her team men she had served alongside, treated their wounds, shared their dangers, and realized that her carefully constructed cover was about to be blown. "Because I designed the prototype for this technology 3 years ago," she said quietly. "Before I became a corpsman, before I joined the Navy, before any of you knew me." The revelation hit the team like a thunderbolt. Harrison's weapon lowered slightly as he stared at the woman he had known as a dedicated but unremarkable military medic, stopped monitoring his radio frequencies. His usually quick wit abandoned him completely. Sarah continued speaking, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. "My name is Sarah Martinez, but it's also Dr. Sarah Martinez, formerly of the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. I have a doctorate in bioengineering from MIT and a secondary specialty in microelectronics integration. Williams struggled to sit up, his injury temporarily forgotten. You're telling us you're some kind of scientist? Why are you here playing Corpsman with us? Sarah carefully placed the extracted device in a sealed medical container before answering. Because 18 months ago, I discovered that my research was being used in ways I never intended. Someone inside DARPA was selling my technology to foreign intelligence services. When I tried to report it through official channels, I was told the investigation was being handled internally. Harrison's leadership training kicked in as he processed this information. So you went underground, enlisted as a corpsman to investigate from the inside. The CIA approached me after my attempts to expose the security breach were buried, Sarah confirmed. They needed someone with my technical background who could operate in military units that might encounter this technology in the field. I've been tracking its proliferation through various military operations. Who had been silent during this exchange, suddenly looked up from his radio. Doc, whatever your real name is, that device you just pulled out of Tommy, is it transmitting our location right now? Sarah examined the small piece of technology more carefully, using a specialized scanner from her medical kit that the team now realized wasn't standard Corpsman equipment. It's been transmitting continuously, not just location data, but biometric information, stress levels, even conversations picked up through bone conduction. The silence that followed was deafening. Every member of the team was processing the same terrible realization. They had been compromised on every mission Williams had participated in. Every tactical advantage they thought they had possessed had been an illusion. Was the first to find his voice. How many of us are carrying these things? Sarah's scanner revealed the horrible truth as she checked each team member. All of you, she said grimly. Every single one of you has one of these devices implanted somewhere in your body. Laughed bitterly through his pain. So we've been walking surveillance platforms for how long? Months, years. The technology only became operational 6 months ago, Sarah explained. But yes, every mission since then has been monitored. Your heart rates during combat, your conversations during downtime, your locations at all times, it's all been transmitted to someone. Harrison's mind was working through the tactical implications at lightning speed. That explains how they knew we were coming tonight, how they had time to set up those underground positions, how they knew exactly where to hit us. Sarah nodded grimly. The Taliban fighters didn't just get lucky. They were given detailed intelligence about your approach routes, your team composition, even your individual capabilities. Had been monitoring enemy radio frequencies throughout this conversation, but now he looked up with alarm. Speaking of which, we've got bigger problems. I'm picking up chatter about additional enemy units moving to surround this position. They know exactly where we are. The team's situation had gone from desperate to nearly hopeless. They were outnumbered, low on ammunition, carrying wounded, and now they knew their position was being continuously broadcast to their enemies. The extraction helicopter was still unable to approach due to heavy ground fire, and their quick reaction force was still 10 minutes away. But Sarah wasn't finished with her revelations. She reached into her medical kit and what appeared to be a standard field surgery tool, but when she activated it, the device emitted a low humming sound and displayed a complex interface. I can disable the implants, she announced, but it's going to hurt, and it has to be done right now. These devices have self-destruct mechanisms if they detect tampering. I need to override their security protocols before we move from this position. Williams gripped his rifle. Do it. I don't care how much it hurts. Sarah began the delicate process of electronically disabling Williams' implant. Her fingers flew over the device's interface with the skill of someone who had designed the original technology. Within minutes, the implant's transmission ceased, but Williams' face was pale from pain. The bad news, Sarah continued as she worked, is that disabling these devices will alert whoever's been monitoring you that their surveillance network has been compromised. They're going to know we're onto them. Harrison checked his watch and ammunition supply. How long to disable all of them? 15 minutes if everything goes perfectly, Sarah replied. But we'll be sitting ducks while I work, and once word gets out that the surveillance network has been compromised, every asset connected to this operation is going to be burned. managed a pained grin. "Doc, I don't care if you're really Albert in disguise. Right now you're the only chance we have of getting out of here alive." Sarah had already moved on too, her device working to override his implant's security systems. "There's something else you need to know," she said as she worked. "The reason I was assigned to your team specifically wasn't random. Intelligence suggests that your unit was being used as test subjects for the technology's combat effectiveness." His voice carried an edge of anger. "You mean we've been guinea pigs this whole time?" "Worse than that," Sarah replied grimly. "I think someone wanted to see how the technology performed when the test subjects were in mortal danger. This entire operation might have been designed to put you in exactly this situation." The weight of this revelation settled over the team like a suffocating blanket. They weren't just fighting for their lives against Taliban insurgents. They were fighting against their own government's betrayal, against enemies who had been given every advantage, against a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of military intelligence. But as Sarah worked to free them from their electronic shackles, the sound of approaching helicopters could be heard in the distance. Their quick reaction force was finally arriving, and with it, the possibility of survival. The question was whether Sarah could complete her work before their enemies closed the trap completely. The sound of approaching helicopters grew louder as Sarah frantically worked to disable the remaining surveillance implants. She had successfully deactivated the devices in Williams, but Harrison and two other team members still carried active transmitters that were broadcasting their exact position to enemy forces. Its radio crackled with an urgent transmission from their quick reaction force. "Ground team, we're 3 minutes out, but we're picking up significant enemy movement converging on your position from multiple directions. Whatever you're doing, you need to finish it fast." Sarah's hands moved with surgical precision over her electronic device as she worked on Harrison's implant. The team leader remained motionless despite the obvious pain as the deactivation process interfered with his nervous system. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his voice remained steady as he coordinated their defensive preparations. "Even wounded, you two need to cover our southern approach. Williams, can you still provide sniper support with that shoulder?" Williams tested his range of motion carefully. "I can shoot, Commander. Might not be my best work, but I can still put rounds on target." The first wave of Taliban reinforcements appeared on the ridge below their position, moving in coordinated assault formation. These weren't the same fighters they had encountered at the compound. These men moved with military precision and carried advanced weapons that suggested foreign training and support. Opened fire with controlled bursts, his M4 carbine spitting flame in the growing darkness. "Contact south, approximately 20 hostiles advancing up the slope. They've got night vision and body armor." Sarah's device beeped softly as Harrison's implant went offline. "Commander, you're clear," she announced, immediately moving to his position while he continued engaging targets below. The young SEAL didn't break his firing rhythm as Sarah began working on his implant. "Doc, I don't care what your real job is. You've got more balls than half the operators I've served with. Just get this thing out of me so we can fight without giving away our position." Enemy mortar rounds began impacting around their position as Sarah disabled surveillance device. The Taliban forces had called in their own indirect fire support, suggesting a level of coordination and resources that went far beyond a typical insurgent cell. Its radio intercept capabilities revealed the scope of the conspiracy they were facing. "Commander, I'm picking up communications in multiple languages, Arabic, Farsi, and what sounds like Russian. This isn't just Taliban. We're dealing with a multinational operation." Sarah moved to the next team member as enemy fire intensified around their position. Her electronic warfare device was performing flawlessly, but each deactivation took precious time they didn't have. The approaching quick reaction force was still 2 minutes away, and enemy forces were closing in from 3 directions. Despite his wounded leg, had managed to set up an improvised explosive device using his remaining demolition charges. "Doc, when you get a chance, you need to know something about these implants. I've been thinking about the timing." Sarah looked up from her work, her face illuminated by muzzle flashes and the glow of her electronic device. "What timing?" "Every major operation we've been on in the past 6 months has gone sideways somehow," explained between bursts of covering fire. "Targets that weren't where intelligence said they'd be, ambushes that seemed too well coordinated. Equipment failures at critical moments. Harrison's tactical mind immediately grasped the implications. Someone's been using our biometric data to predict our operational effectiveness. They know when we're stressed, when we're fatigued, when we're most likely to make mistakes. Sarah finished disabling another implant and moved to the final team member. It's worse than that. The technology I developed was designed to enhance soldier performance by monitoring stress indicators and automatically adjusting equipment functionality. But in the wrong hands, it could be used to deliberately degrade performance at critical moments. The revelation hit the team like a physical blow. Not only had they been under surveillance, but their own equipment could have been sabotaged remotely based on data from their implants. Every weapon malfunction, every communication failure, every tactical disadvantage they had experienced might have been artificially induced. Williams, providing overwatch from an elevated position, called out new contacts. Multiple vehicles approaching from the east. Looks like technical trucks with mounted weapons. Our situation is about to get much worse. Sarah's device emitted a warning tone as she worked on the final implant. This one's different, she announced with concern. It's got additional security protocols I haven't seen before. Trying to disable it remotely might trigger a feedback loop that could seriously injure or kill the host. The team member in question was Petty Officer Second Class, a quiet explosives expert who had joined the team just 3 months earlier. His face went pale as he realized the implications of Sarah's words. "What are my options, Doc?" asked, his voice steady despite the circumstances. Sarah's expression was grim as she studied her device's readouts. "I can attempt a manual extraction, but it would require field surgery under combat conditions. Or we can leave it active and hope it doesn't compromise our escape." Its radio suddenly erupted with multiple urgent transmissions. "Commander, our QRF is reporting that they're being tracked by surface-to-air missiles. Someone's feeding targeting data to enemy air defenses. They can't approach our position while we're still transmitting." The terrible truth became clear. This implant wasn't just tracking the team's position, it was actively targeting their rescue forces. As long as the device remained active, their extraction was impossible. Harrison made the command decision that defined true leadership under fire. "Sarah, do the surgery. This is going to hurt, but it's our only chance." Nodded grimly as he lay flat on the rocky ground. "Do what you have to do, Doc, just make it fast." Sarah opened her medical kit and surgical instruments that none of the team had seen before, advanced tools that combined traditional surgery with electronic warfare capabilities. Her hands moved with the confidence of someone who had performed this exact procedure many times before. "I need covering fire and 5 minutes of absolute stillness," she announced. "This device is implanted next to your spinal column. One wrong move and you could be paralyzed." The team formed a defensive perimeter around Sarah as she began the most critical surgery of her career. Enemy forces were now within 300 meters of their position, and the sound of automatic weapons fire was constant. But Sarah's hands remained steady as she made the initial incision and maintained suppressing fire while Harrison coordinated with their circling extraction helicopter. The pilot confirmed that enemy targeting systems were still tracking their aircraft, making landing impossible until the final implant was neutralized. Sarah's surgical work was complicated by the need to simultaneously hack the implant's electronic systems while physically extracting it from spine. Her specialized tools could disrupt the device's security protocols while precisely cutting through the tissue that had grown around it. "Almost there," Sarah murmured, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "I need you to flex your toes to make sure I haven't damaged any nerve pathways." His toes moving normally despite the pain. "Still got feeling in everything, Doc. Just get that thing out of me." The extraction was successful, but as Sarah pulled the implant free, it emitted a brief electronic pulse that was detected by enemy forces. Immediately, the intensity of incoming fire increased dramatically as their enemies realized their surveillance network had been completely compromised. Its radio confirmed what they all feared. "All enemy units are converging on this position. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they overrun us." But Sarah's work had the desired effect. Their extraction helicopter immediately banked toward their position as the targeting lock was broken. The pilot's voice came through clearly. "Ground team, I'm coming in hot. Be ready for immediate extraction." Harrison gathered his wounded team as the helicopter descended through enemy fire toward their rocky perch. And Williams would need immediate medical attention once they reached safety, but they were all mobile and combat effective. As they prepared for extraction, Sarah made one final revelation that would change everything. She reached into her medical kit and a data storage device that contained terabytes of information about the surveillance conspiracy. "This contains everything," she announced over the sound of rotor blades and gunfire. "Names, organizations, financial transactions, operational records, everything I've been gathering for the past 18 months. But once we extract, I'm blown as an intelligence asset. My cover will be permanently compromised." Harrison looked at the woman who had just saved all their lives and realized that her sacrifice went far beyond the physical danger they had all shared. "What happens to your mission now?" Sarah smiled grimly as enemy bullets sparked off the helicopter's armored hull. "My mission was to gather evidence and protect operators like you from being used as test subjects. Mission accomplished." The helicopter lifted off under heavy fire, carrying the team toward safety and toward a reckoning that would expose corruption at the highest levels of military intelligence. As they climbed away from the battlefield, Sarah continued treating her patients, but now the team looked at her with new respect and understanding. Williams, despite his wounds, managed to voice what they were all thinking. "Doc, I don't care what your real name is or what agency you really work for. You're part of this team. You saved our lives in more ways than one." Harrison nodded in agreement as he watched the landscape pass below them. "When we get back, there are going to be a lot of people asking questions about what happened here tonight. Are you ready for that?" Sarah checked bandages one final time as they flew toward the forward operating base. "I've been ready for 18 months. The only question is whether the system is ready to hear the truth about what's been done to soldiers like you." Monitoring radio traffic from their rescue, looked up with an expression of amazement. "Doc, you realize you just took down an international conspiracy using nothing but medical training and pure grit. That's not something they teach in Corpsman School." Sarah's response was simple and direct. "No, they don't teach it in Corpsman School, but they do teach it at MIT, at DARPA, and at Langley. Sometimes you need to use every tool available to protect the people who matter most." As their helicopter disappeared into the Afghan night, carrying secrets that would reshape military intelligence operations for years to come, the team understood that they had witnessed something extraordinary. Their quiet, competent corpsman had revealed herself to be one of the most effective intelligence operators of her generation, and her sacrifice had saved not just their lives, but potentially the lives of countless other soldiers who might have been used as unwitting test subjects. The mission that had begun as a routine extraction had become a turning point in the war against those who would exploit America's finest warriors for their own purposes. And at the center of it all was a woman who had given up her cover, her career, and her safety to ensure that the truth would finally be revealed.